I would describe him as fun, goofy. I mean, goofy is probably a good word for a lot of times. I mean, we'd do things and he would just kind of be the one to throw on the funny glasses or the funny outfit for birthdays and just come up and give you a hug and just make noises and do stuff. Just pose and do goofy things and just kind of climb up a pole and make funny faces. And then I got a whole ton of pictures with him, which is kind of a fun thing to remember.
So when he was little, he was, and even throughout his life, obviously, he was just a funny kid. He would kind of light up the room. My grandma with the boys, they just had a special connection. Her passing really affected him. We kind of noticed he just closed up. He did not want to even write a letter or read things, he just handled things very differently than his brother.
And we noticed there was something with that really early on. He was the kid who wouldn't be with the other kids. He would go off on his own in the corner. He didn't want it. He had struggled interacting with the other kids.
We had found a note in his room about not wanting to go to school, and he was in 4th grade, and it was a kind of a concerning note that we had found.
He struggled in grade school, middle school. He did struggle with some bullying and just being very anxious. We took him to the school when nobody was there, when they didn't have a day so he wasn't exposed to all the other kids. And we had a person meet us there, and he did not want to go into the school, and he sometimes just scream and cry and just.
He just had such a sensitive, heart, for other people. So it's, of course, a bittersweet memory, but I think that just shows his personality so deeply at such a young age. He was, he was just so soft. And I think that reveals a little bit of why he was so easily hurt as a teenager, not always feeling like he fit in, and which eventually led to, substance use.
There was just a lot of anxiety when he was young, and we got him therapy. We tried working with him. I just think that he struggled with that, and that was part of his personality, and I think he just turned to some unhealthy things to try to cope with that.
He had texted us the day before, which was Saturday, and he had said, "Happy Saturday. I love you guys. I'm at work." He had just started a job at the campus. He was working in the cafe there at the campus. And we both had texted back that we loved him too, and then we hadn't talked to him at all. That was the last contact we had with him. I remember vividly where I was. I was at the workout club, and I had just gotten out of my class and got that text from him, and I was at the lockers, and I remember texting him back. And then I had left the gym, and I went to, I think it was the dollar store, to get him some Valentine gifts, him and Kate, and some Valentine things. I was always a gift mom. I love to do things for them and make them feel special.
And Logan had talked about possibly coming home that day, and he stayed at UWM in his dorm, and he didn't come out. And Aaron and I weren't getting along that well that time because of the issues with Logan, and we didn't really discuss whether he'd be coming home or not. So I think both of us in our minds I think we even talked about earlier in the day, do you think Logan's up? Whatever. We kind of talked about him a little bit throughout the day. And at dinner time, actually, we sat down, or we were going to sit down, but we hadn't done anything all day. So I actually ran out and got food for us. And I had this uneasy feeling when I was out getting food. It was a weird, sorry. It just had this weird feeling. We both ate, and we talked about it. We're like, we need to get in touch with him. And actually, Erin texted him, and just right after she texted, she got a phone call back.
was 8:37 p.m. and I received a phone call, and it had his best friend's name on my caller ID that came up, and that was not typical that Alex would typically call me, so I knew something was wrong. And he was pretty frantic. He had called and said, Mrs. Rachwal, you need to call down to the UW police right away. And I was like, Alex, what's wrong? What's going on? And he didn't, I still don't know if I think he knew, but he didn't obviously want to say anything. And he just said, you got to call down. So while I was on the phone with Alex, Rick was on his phone trying to call down to the police department, and we couldn't get an answer.
Nobody would talk to us from the police department. I mean, I called. Someone took a message, say someone will get back to you. Okay, so I don't know, 20 minutes go by, 15, not even, I don't know how, it probably wasn't that much because it may have seemed that way, but called back again and nobody would get in touch with us. So that's when we were, the advice we got was just go down there.
I feel like at that point I knew he was gone. And I had said that in the car, and my husband was kind of holding on to thinking he's, maybe was just in the hospital, or, he had not actually passed.
Because, Aaron was, saying he's gone, and I didn't want to believe that. And even when I kind of believed it happened, your body, you go into shock and you still don't want to believe it.
So Logan lived on campus in a dorm, and he lived on the 11th floor, and at the bottom of that dorm was the police department. So his dorm was in the building, the same police department the police department was. So we went into the little lobby, and it was again very quiet. There was no one there. We had to ring like a little bell. Caden, he just started seizure-like shaking, and I think he knew also. We hadn't been told yet, but I just grabbed him and held him up and just said, it's going to be okay, and just try to be strong for him, because he was struggling.
I didn't know what to think. I mean, just a total shock, not knowing. I mean, it's not anything I ever expected to have to go through.
He was laying, just looked like he had fallen asleep. He was laying in his bed very peacefully. And then when we left, I remember looking down the hall, and there were police officers lined up, all waiting for us. So, yeah, it was just a really, really hard night, a really painful memory. Kind of surreal, you're still in shock. 4 years later, you're still in shock. Did that really happen? I can't believe it's us. It's just very, very surreal. Logan was brought home on the day of love. And so I truly believe God knew that's what he needed. I feel like if he were still living, we don't know what he would have been going through right now. And that soft, sensitive kid wouldn't have survived, some of the things I think he might have been headed for. with drug use. And so at the end of the day, I just say, like, I truly believe, like, God knew what was the best thing for him and for us. And that's hard, but at the bottom of my soul, I believe that.
You hear about people that say, oh, you hear about people talk about heartache, right? So something like this, you really, really learn what heartache is. I mean, we're laying in bed and it feels like you have two tons like sitting on your chest, and it hurts. And it's like, okay, this is heartache.
I mean, I have some journals from Logan, like when he was in treatment and talking about his faith being renewed at that time, a few years prior. I have pictures of him reading his Bible. He would often ask us to pray for him. Our boys were brought up, going to church, and, we were a very faith-based family. Some people, I think, go through this and get angry. And I always say, like, God never promises, like, that we're going to have a perfect life. There is pain, and there is a lot of challenges in our world, as just being, a student and going through. That's, I think, a little glimpse of, where my faith journey has honestly just really saved us through this whole thing.
I guess the thoughts are, I know that we weren't guaranteed anything in this life. Nobody's guaranteed anything. Our kids were a blessing. They're a gift from God. And I guess knowing that they're not really, and my faith, I believe they're not really ours. I mean, we're here to try to guide them through life. And we were lucky to have them for 19 years. And it was just his time. And I feel like he's in a better place. So
it's just it's a hard life. And I think we have to hang on to something. So that has helped me so much that, he was brought home on the day of love. God loved him that much that he was chosen to, impact other people in a different way. I mean, he's saving lives through his face, through his image. I think he just makes such an impression, right? So I know he is saving lives in a way that maybe he could never have done in his human, form. I like to always say, Love Logan Foundation is not just about Logan. It is, yes, Logan's the face of the organization, but it is representing so many other kids who have passed away from fentanyl. And most of them not knowing what they took, that it was going to kill them. No, I always say no amount of love in our home fought that. It doesn't matter how much you love your kids. If you don't know about it and aren't talking to your kids about it, they're susceptible to it. Any child is susceptible to this tragedy. So that is why I think the foundation is so important.
And I think Aaron would agree. It's that we don't want any other family to go through what we did. I mean, it's awful, and just if we can save one life, I mean, it's worth it. Whoever we talk to, if we can save a life there, or if they talk to somebody, you never know. I mean, it could. I mean, as long as we can save a life. I mean, that's our motivation.
And most parents, I think, are, I don't want to say naive, but like a lot of parents are like, oh, well, like my kid wouldn't do that. Like I have good kids. And I always tell people, like, that would have been me. Like, right, I have good kids, so my kids wouldn't do that. And that's how it's changed me. Like, it doesn't matter if you think you have good kids make mistakes. Logan was a good kid. He just made a bad choice, and that first choice, whenever that was for him, and I don't know when that was, but I always tell kids, like, the first choice is the most important one, because you don't know whatever substance you're using, whether it's alcohol or marijuana or whatever it is, you don't know how that's going to affect your brain. You don't know your genetic line and how that's going to affect you. And no one makes that choice to use something with the thought of, oh, I want to have an addiction. They're not using something or trying something with the intention of going down that path. No one is. But sadly, it happens to so many people because the drugs are very strong. Even, vape cartridges and all that stuff is so strong and it's very hard to get off of. And so it's critical when you're thinking about that one choice. It's just so important to think before you make those choices.
They need to know these things. Whether you believe there's a problem or not, we're not trying to insinuate there's a problem, but we want school administrators and principals and superintendents and things to understand that this message needs to get to these kids when they're young, and to get this message to them when it is a captive audience. I mean, they're brought there by the school and told you need to listen to this, and hopefully we get the message out to the majority of the kids.
This isn't a just say no conversation. This is a just know, K-N-O-W. Like, you have to have the knowledge, you have to know. So it's not just say no. It's not that easy. Kids are struggling and there's a lot of anxiety and there's a lot of pressure, and drugs are so accessible, pills are accessible, and they're normalized. I tell people all the time, like, we all grew up with some kind of medication, whether it's a Tylenol or whatever. So pills do not seem scary. Logan wasn't, laying in bed putting needles in his arm. He didn't feel scared of a pill. So he just took it. And that's sadly what's happening across our country. Many, many children, young kids are dying from pills because they're not scary. They're not scared of them. It's a very normal thing to just take some medication.
I mean, Aaron and I, we were just a normal family. I mean, our kids grew up, went to school, played baseball, did the things that, people dream of, about when they have a family. It doesn't, it's just how fragile life is, and it can happen to anybody. I mean, you could feel like you did everything perfectly, and just bad choices, bad influences. There's just so much evil out there that it can take over, and it can happen to anybody. And just to talk to your family, talk to your kids, just understand what they're going through, I guess.
I mean, we had over 70,000 deaths in this country over the last 3 years, every year, from fentanyl. So if you take 5,000 families and multiply it by how many siblings are in each family, think about how many kids are left without their sibling. And that is a huge loss for a child or a young adult. It's just a huge loss. It's almost like an identity loss, because you lose part of your childhood, you lose your future with that person. There's just so much loss. It's not just the death. It's like the death of your past, the death of your future.
There's some things that you need to do when you're talking about this topic. There's some things you need to stay away from, especially social media. I mean, it's good to post things, good to post positive things, but what I always tell Aaron too is just don't look at the comments. There's a lot of ugly, nasty comments and things that you can get when you start to put yourself out there in the social media realm. When we were going through the issues with Logan, we felt extremely alone because there is a stigma, and people, families, parents, anybody who knows somebody who might be struggling, there needs to be more safe places to talk, and there needs to be, I guess, the stigma barrier needs to be broken down, because we felt you kind of, you can feel ashamed, not that we should have been, but you feel ashamed, or you feel alone, or just alone and don't know where to turn, and sometimes you don't get the support from other parents and friends and different things. So just because there's that stigma, and that's just the one thing that I just want to, that's the other thing that as our foundation, we want to try to break that stigma too.
We were good parents, and we were not perfect, but I know there's no perfect family. And when you're a parent and your kid is struggling, you try to help them and you do whatever you can. Are there things that I would go back and do differently? Of course. And I think every parent can say that, whether they have a kid that's alive or not. You know, of course, as parents, you learn with your kids. But I just would want people to know that we loved him. And I know he knew he was loved. If you look at his grave, you know, his headstone, he wrote a poem, and it was about the love he had in his home. And so I hang on to that. You know, that's really special for us. Fentanyl is knowledge. You can't fight it and win. There's no way. Like, it's a death sentence. And if you don't die the first time, you're addicted instantly. And so at some point you will die. And so the only thing I truly feel like will fight that is knowledge. I mean, I've met hundreds of families that have gone through this same exact tragedy. And most of them very like-minded families, good homes, loving parents, and just had a kid struggle and make one decision. 16 years old, 14 years old, 17 years old, like Logan, 19. You know, it's sadly a huge problem in our country, and you know, the numbers are staggering, and people, you know, don't know that.
How these young adults, all the people who've lost their lives to fentanyl are people. They deserve that chance to recover. We always say it with fentanyl. It's just that chance is, it's gone. It's just gone. Hello.
Thank you. What? That's mine. No. Maybe it is. It's not mine. It's yours. Wait.
Let's see it.
Golden sideliners.
Oh, that's cool. Huh.
Thank you.
Is that cool?
Is it a flex?
Not on the wood.